Live.
We are live for our final segment of the 2020 Utah Podcast Summit. Holy cow, it has been a day.
Wow.
I've learned so much.
I've got to watch this thing like 3 times.
Right.
I didn't get to go to your guys' track. I'm going to watch this has been full of so many. I said one gold nugget. Holy crap. I got so many gold nuggets out of this thing.
I'm a prospector here, Bobby. I'm a prospector.
I was taking notes all day and just like having my mind blown, in with everything. So yeah, I'm planning to go back and rewatch both of your tracks as well, because I know there was so much in there that I missed and couldn't access. So I'm
gonna watch my track again anyway, just because there were a lot of really good things that I didn't get a chance to write it all down.
Right.
So
now I know I got a lot of work to do.
Right. That's the good part about these, though, is that, you come out of it feel like, and this is why I love podcast conferences in general, is you come into it and it's just like, it's just going to kick your butt into gear. As long as you actually sit into it and take some action. So,
yeah.
All right. So what are we doing tonight?
So how are we going to explain? Who's taking over explaining the voice of the West? Voice of the West. You will win the ultimate honor of being the voice of the West. You will be the only human being on the planet with a podcast with this award in it, because it's, well, okay, except for the guy last year. Okay, there is one other person.
But we kind of changed like what it was from last year. So that's kind of the difference there. So last year we started this with the voice of the West, and it was more of a type of a scavenger hunt and a fun game that we played at the in-person conference. And after the summit ended, we kind of sat down and we're like, we could do something else with this. What could we do with it? And so we kind of brainstormed some ideas. We played around with it and we're like, pitch competition. Should do a pitch competition.
Yep, that's what we should do.
Mm-hmm.
Hello, Paul. Just a hello to Paul who's saying hello.
Hi, Paul. Welcome to the stream. Yeah, so we decided, it was like, okay, this year we are going to change a little bit. Like, we loved the name, the Voice of the West, and it was so perfect for what we were trying to do with the Utah Podcast Summit. So we turned it into a pitch competition, and over the past 6 months, we have been hosting a series of events, qualifying rounds, where podcasters have come in, pitched their podcast, and we've gotten a few judges to come to each one of these qualifying rounds. We did not judge any of these because
it's not our fault that anybody didn't get to come up here. There were so many good ones.
Don't blame us.
Oh my gosh. No, I'm just glad that we were not judges, because like Brandon said, there were so many good podcasts. It's amazing the talent that showed up to pitch their podcast.
I would have not wanted to judge that.
I know.
There were so many cool podcasts out there. Thank you so much, everybody that participated.
Yeah, seriously. Every one of you who pitched, like, you had an amazing podcast, and we wish we could have brought you all along, but here we are now. And it's going to be a great night tonight. So we're going to get started.
Introduce the judges?
Yeah, so I'm going to give a quick overview of what's going to happen tonight. First, we're going to introduce the judges, just like Bobby said. After we introduce our judges, we're going to go right into the podcasters pitching their podcasts. What that will look like is each podcaster will come on stage, onto the video, and they will have 5 minutes to talk about their podcast. After that 5 minutes is up, they have another 5 minutes where the judges are going to sit there and talk about, are going to sit there and ask questions of the podcasters. So if there's a point that the podcasters didn't get to cover, or if the judges want some clarification on something, they're going to come on and they're going to ask you about it. So yeah, it's going to be a fun night. All right. Let's bring our judges on. First up, we have... Okay, so first up, we have Josh. Hi, Josh.
What's going on, guys?
Dude, the random dude in the house.
So Josh, I wanted to introduce Josh first, because Josh has been a judge at every single one of the qualifying rounds. He's really been instrumental in making this podcast, or this podcast competition, what it is. So Josh, I made him blush. So Josh, tell us a little bit.
I struggle with compliments. I do.
I get that. Tell us a little bit about what you're looking for from the podcasters tonight.
So I'm looking for a lot of variety, both in content, strategy, and are you looking at long term? What is your long term goal? Because a podcast can do really, really well at first, and then if you don't have that long term goal, yes,
Is that the technical term?
It is the technical term. So I figured this is a family show, so we got to keep it PG rated. So that's the big thing, is making sure you're taking care of the here and now, but also looking down the road. If this is your dream, you got to see it all the way through. So,
all right.
Love it.
Thank you, Josh.
Yeah.
Our next judge that we're going to be presenting tonight, or that's going to be joining us tonight, is Eliza Kitchens. Welcome, Eliza.
Hey, guys.
So I may have mentioned earlier today, and in case you missed it, the Pod Mill is sponsoring the Voice of the West competition. They are providing a package for the podcast that wins the competition to help them produce some of their episodes. So it's a really great opportunity to work with the Pod Mill, one of the best little podcast recording studios in Salt Lake. And we're so excited to have you join us here tonight, Eliza.
Thank you. And I'm actually here instead of Spencer Wright, who is amazing if you guys have all met him. Thanks.
Yeah.
Glad to be here.
I mean, you're the executive producer at the Pod Mill, so it's not instead, you are here because you're going to be awesome at this.
You're a rock star.
Yeah.
Thanks.
What are you looking for from our podcasters tonight?
I similar to our last judge, I'm looking for our podcasters to have an eye on the structure of each individual episode as a part of a longer series. So I'm looking for them to be really detail oriented about how the structure of each individual podcast is set up, but then also how that builds into a longer series and tells a longer story.
Very nice.
Can you hear me? Oh, okay.
Yes.
I can hear you. Yeah, thank you so much. All right, thanks, Eliza. We're excited to hear your insights. Last but not least, we have John Lee Dumas joining us as our special guest judge tonight. John, welcome back.
Whoa, it looks like it's like raining here in Puerto Rico right now. We've got some crazy stuff going on in my background, maybe some fireflies. I don't know. It's getting crazy here. It's getting pretty late. The sun's going down. But listen, what I'm looking for is uniqueness. I'm looking for the podcast that is going to be filling a void that is currently existing in the podcast market space. You know, I'm going to come out and be a little Simon Cowell tonight if I hear the podcast's whole focus is interviewing successful entrepreneurs, because that's just not a winning strategy. But there's a lot of winning strategies niching under that topic to get initial momentum and traction. And I'm going to make sure that people really get that solid understanding moving forward.
All right. Excellent.
All right.
We ready to get started with our podcast pitchers, presenters?
Okay. It's been beautiful. I hear that you've got to kick me out. So
sorry, Bobby.
Bye, Bobby.
We need room in the backstage. Bye, Bobby.
I'm going to kick back and enjoy the show, right? Oh.
All right. Kicking Bobby out. Bye, Bobby.
Do you need me gone, or do you want me to be the timer?
How about you be the timer? Well, actually, yeah, be the timer, because we're going to have a couple people presenting as well. I think that'll make it easiest.
All right, I'm the timer. And 3, 2, 1, poof.
There we go. Perfect. All right. First up, we are going to have Blair Hodges with the Maxwell Institute podcast. So Blair, hey, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm doing great. Glad to have you here tonight. Are you ready for this?
I didn't think I was going first, so yeah, I guess
Sorry,
I'm
surprise.
ready for this.
It's easier just to surprise people and be like, hey, you're first. All right. And I see you have your screen here. I'm going to add that in. There you go. All right. Blair, take it away. You're gonna kick butt.
Okay, thank
Good
you.
luck.
So, hello, everybody. My name is Blair Hodges. I'm host of the Maxwell Institute podcast. It's produced at Brigham Young University in Provo, and I've been there since 2013 when I started doing the show. And the Maxwell Institute podcast is supposed to be a celebration of the life of the mind and things of the spirit. It's a place where religious faith and academic scholarship sit down to have a conversation to break bread together. And each episode is a 60-minute discussion between myself as the host and a scholar who's written a book or finished an article or has just done a project on something to do with religion. And although the podcast is produced at Brigham Young University, it's not primarily focused all the time on the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. It's not about proselyting or reaching people and teaching people about that religion. It's about all sorts of different religions. There's a brilliant scholar of religion who once said that people who only know one religion don't know any religion. And what he meant by that is that religious believers who don't spend any time learning about other faiths can't fully appreciate even their own faith. And so learning about a variety of different religions sheds new light on our own faith. And it can also foster greater peace between people of different faiths. So I think that the main theme of the show then is that curiosity is a religious virtue. Curiosity can lead us to change some of our own beliefs. It helps us be humble about what we believe. It helps us be open to the perspective of other people. It helps us to be open to the experiences of other people. Religious believers sometimes put themselves in a place where they think that they have all the answers already that they're supposed to communicate to other people, and so they close their ears. They don't listen as much when they encounter things that don't fit their religious framework. And so this show is trying to break that habit for people and help curiosity become a religious virtue for them. Now, that process can be difficult, so there are some risks to this. When we sit down and talk to scholars of religion, it's not always comfortable for religious people to hear about their faith being talked about by scholars, because scholars sometimes have ways of accounting for faith that religious people don't agree with, or that seem strange and new. On the flip side of that coin, scholars who are religious themselves often run into difficulties or interesting puzzles as people in the academy, where you need to have data and you need to think about human impact of things, and you can't prove that God exists in a university. And so it can be tricky for scholars who are religious themselves to navigate being a scholar. And so we invite scholars of religion to come and talk about their projects, but they also come and talk about what it's like to be a person of faith dealing with scholarship. And we also have people that don't have any religious beliefs on the show. And sometimes the conversation will get into how they are sensitive but fair and honest about the religions that they study. So the other main value of the show, along with curiosity, is hospitality. The goal of the Maxwell Institute podcast isn't to debate religion, to proselytize religion. It's to understand different religions, to talk to scholars who can bring their work and present it for broader audiences. I don't know how many of you have recently read a scholarly monograph written for the Academy about some religious topic. So the show takes those books and puts it into a podcast form so that you can digest the work of that scholar in under 60 minutes. And if it interests you, you can go ahead and pick up their book. The show, we have had people from all sorts of different faith backgrounds. Paul Reeve is a Latter-day Saint. He was on and talked about race and Mormonism, a really hard-hitting episode that looked at some of the history of Mormonism dealing with racism. Kate Bowler, an evangelical Christian who wrote a book about the prosperity gospel movement and later was diagnosed with cancer, a terminal diagnosis, and had to deal with writing a book about how faith can save you from all manner of sickness, to having a sickness herself. Robert Alter's another guest that we've had, one of the biggest scholars of the Bible. And he came and reflected on the course of his career. And then Empo Tutu, Desmond Tutu is her father, and together they wrote a book about forgiveness. So those are some of the examples that we've had on the show. So it's about curiosity, hospitality, faith and scholarship. My time's running out, but in the Q&A with you all, I can talk a little bit more about the shape of our episodes, the reach, of our episodes and what our long-term goals are for the for the show. Thanks. I appreciate being able to have this opportunity.
Awesome. Well, Blair, thank you so much for pitching. Good to see you again. From what I saw you last time, I'm going to let Eliza and John kick off the questions, and then I'll follow up from there.
Cool. I'm happy to start off. What would you say, Blair, or who would you say your avatar is for this podcast?
I want somebody who is kind of a seeker, a religious seeker who likes to think about religious questions. They might feel comfortable in their own faith, but they really wonder about why there's so many different religions in the world, but they don't have time to go get a graduate degree in religious studies. I foolishly decided to do that and have kind of lucked out in finding employment that way. So I'm looking for people who want to know more about different faiths. They may be looking for a new religion themselves. They may be dissatisfied with a religion, or they may just be curious about religion. But that's who we're looking for, is people who like to think about God and like to think about how humans interact with God. So religious-minded people.
Now, it's the BYU Maxwell Institute podcast. Do you have a tagline for the show?
Yeah, the tagline for the show is where faith and scholarship sit down for a nice conversation.
Okay. Very cool. Is that on the logo itself, or
It's
is
not
that
on the logo, but it's like our plug in Apple Podcasts, and like
Yeah.
when you go to our website, if you go to the site, it's there at the top.
Yeah, cool. I have a couple of follow-ups, but I'll let Eliza and Josh rock for a second.
Yeah, I just have one question for now. Will each episode be based around a specific guest?
Yeah, so every episode, well, with a very few exceptions, each episode is a 60-minute interview with one guest about a particular topic.
Gotcha.
Okay. So, Blair, just kind of from hearing your pitch the first time to now, what sort of things have you changed from the qualifying round? I think if I recall, I remember asking you about social media, as far as what are your efforts there? What sort of things have changed or improved?
So I've been doing a lot more with Headliner. I think I heard John talking about Headliner during one of his presentations. It is fantastic. So I've been making little snippets of episodes to push out on social media, and then those get shared around. So I'll find a little 60-second excerpt from an episode that's really interesting, that serves kind of as a you're out there fishing, you're throwing your lure out there, you're trying to
Little teaser.
somebody and pull them in. Yeah, exactly. So that's been really fascinating to keep improving the design of those, and kind of learning how Headliner works. The other thing is I've started to categorize different episodes, and so we're doing a series on the Book of Mormon, a Mormon scripture, and those episodes have their own kind of category. They're called brief theological introductions, and so that's actually, and I've kind of been promoting those separately as part of something else, and I've seen my listenership increase because of interest in that particular series. I'm pulling in more listeners because it's kind of a mini series within the show itself. I didn't want to break it off into a different podcast because I have a pretty good sized audience right now, but I wanted it to be its own kind of episode.
Okay. I'll hand it over to John.
Well, quick question for you, Josh, because you're more familiar with this. Are we supposed to give specific feedback right now as well, or does that come later?
So that'll be later.
Okay.
Tear into me, John.
I have some things to tear into you on, but I guess this now is not the time, unfortunately.
I have a question.
Yeah, Liza, go for it.
Do you have a plan for reaching, I'm just curious about your plan for reaching guests outside of the Mormon faith?
Yeah. So I would say that thus far, it's been a fairly even split, or perhaps even more guests who aren't part of the Mormon
or
faith.
Even outside of Christianity in general too.
Yeah. So we've had scholars from Islam, Buddhism,
Very cool.
Hinduism, Judaism. I would say less than half of the episodes focus on Mormonism itself, and more than half focus on other faiths. Our listenership is about 70% Mormon, but that 30% is an important part of our audience.
Yeah.
And for the 70% Mormon, we really do want to introduce Mormons to like broader religious thought in a responsible, fair, and scholarly, non-polemical way.
Awesome. Well, Blair, thank you again.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks.
Oh,
You're
Chriselle.
muted, Chriselle.
I muted myself out of habit. Thank you, Blair. That was awesome. And thank you, judges. I'm going to put you in the backstage right now. Great. All right. Up next, we have the podcast Cosplay, Stitch, and Seam. We're very excited to hear from you. And I'm also adding in David. Is that correct? Okay.
Yes.
All right. There you are.
Okay, and then I'm also sharing a screen with, there we go, our slides on it, if that's all right.
Absolutely. All right. Take it away.
All right, here we go. So we're the Cosplay, Stitch, and Seam. We have a podcast, behind the stitches and seams of cosplay creation. Going on to the next slide. I'm V-Fire. I'm one of the hosts. I have been cosplaying for, ever since 2008 and have won a dozen solo awards all across the US. I love crafting. I love building things. And I love video games. Go Pannon.
Yay. Hi, I'm Pannon. My favorite tagline for our show is for the stitchers, the seamers, and all the in-betweeners. I have I'd say about 15 years of professional and hobbyist experience doing costumes. I used to build the mascots for like our local Utah Jazz, the Jazz Bear, and other teams, sporting events, things like that. I've also represented the United States twice in international competitions around the world, in the Netherlands in 2017 and in Japan in 2014. So with our combined experience, we want to share from the casual listener all the way up to people who have been doing it for years like us. David.
I'm David. I am the editor of Cosplay, Stitch, and Seam, and I like to think of myself as the entry-level cosplayer because my cosplay career is not near as varied as these two. So I oftentimes interject with I don't understand what this concept is. Can we break that down a little bit more? And it helps open up the opportunity for more of a dialogue for the experienced and the noobs.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there we go. Next slide. We started, I actually started the Cosplay, Stitch, and Seam in 2012 as a blog where I just featured cosplayers from all over Utah and eventually all over the United States, and a couple people across the pond as well. So it was just mostly for sharing really cool things, and then Pennon and I got a job together, and we just talked everybody's ears off about cosplay, and we're like, we talk about this all the time. Why don't we make a podcast about it? And so we did, and David also came on, and gosh, we thank him so much as our editor, because he's god tier editing right now. So we are really, really grateful for having him as a part of our team and also as a co-host as well. Our mission and challenges. So cosplay is a very visual medium. Cosplay is a super, super visual medium, and our mission, we want to share experiences. The more, even though, it's hard to show what a cosplay looks like, we can also talk about how it looks. What are the experiences that people are having? One of the biggest things that we share on the podcast are cosplay horror and happy stories, where things go horribly wrong, or things are just like really sweet stories of making a kid's day. And our biggest mission goal is that cosplay is for everyone. And that brings us to our stats popular episodes. Our popular episodes, personal cosplay makerspace, dealing with like where you are in your room. Can you make a cosplay makerspace in an apartment versus like a really, really big area like a garage, from small to big. Another big ones are like our body positivity panels. We actually have a couple of episodes on that. And we take the panels live to events and have people share their stories and, with their permission, post them as part of our podcast episodes. We get about 1,000 blog views and episode downloads a month. And right now our average is about 320 downloads per episode. We've also been the top 10 cosplay podcasts 2 years now, 2019 and 2020, according to FeedSpot. So thank you, FeedSpot.
Yay!
Yeah. Our community is the biggest thing that we are around. And Penn and David, you guys can jump in. I'm just like rambling.
No, you're fine. You're not rambling at all.
Normally I'm the more quiet one on the podcast.
So one of the things we really stress in our podcast is community, how to lift each other up, how to help share all of these skills and things that we've learned. And to do that, we have a Facebook group. We have people writing in to give us suggestions for episode ideas. And we try to cover as many topics as we can so it's relevant to as many people getting into the hobby just now or people who have been in it that maybe want to learn a new thing.
Our community, we try to involve the audience. So there we go. We do stuff. End of time.
Oh, hey guys. Good to see you again.
Hello.
So like the previous, I'm going to let John and Eliza kick off the questions and then I'll follow up from there.
Well, just so Josh and Eliza are well aware, I want them to know that the golden rule of cosplay is stand your ground. So please keep that in mind as we go forward with this. Am I right, V-Fire?
Sounds good.
Stand your ground. So my first question that I have for you is, and let's answer this in 30 seconds or less. What has been your most successful growth tactic so far for your podcast?
I want to say that it's using the Facebook community that we have. Encouraging them to share our episodes, word of mouth, as well as doing our live episodes at conventions. I mean, we go to conventions regularly, so whether invited or not, we'll be like, hey, let's do a panel and sign up. So I think that's been our biggest ones.
You are the number one in some rankings cosplay podcast.
We're in a top 10 list. It doesn't actually have a number one.
How many of those other top 10 podcasts have you been guests on?
I don't think we've been guests on any of them yet.
How many have you asked to be guests on?
I don't think we haven't reached out to any yet.
Okay.
But that is actually.
If you watch my keynote this morning, you'll realize those are two huge failures, but something to improve upon. And what is a call to action that you guys use during your podcast to have people within or the listeners take action?
Something that we do.
Our biggest.
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
Our biggest call to action is at the end of every episode, we say, be the positive change you want to see in your community. And whether that's teaching others about cosplay, whether it's just being a positive influence to others, whether it's sharing an episode that was particularly meaningful to you, we encourage people to share the positive aspects and not focus on the negative.
Okay.
We also. Sorry, David.
Go ahead.
And again, Josh, am I going to have time to further talk about this later?
Yeah. So, just real quick, we also do a call to action. Really. Share your stories with us, and we'll share them at the end of the podcast.
Okay. Eliza?
Quick question, I think for David mostly. I haven't listened to any of your episodes, but I feel like there's a lot of potential for sound effects and sound design. Mm-hmm. In your episodes, have you guys explored that at all?
It's not something that we discussed, and we decided that we wanted to keep with the regular tone of most podcasts out there, where sound effects distracted from the narrative that we were trying to share with our audience. It felt too cartoony when I have added it. The most sound effects that I do is sometimes when there's a blooper moment, I'll add a blooper sound effect at the end in between each blooper. We have an intro song and an outro song that was created by a family friend of ours, and that's the majority of it.
Now, why are you, as the editor, do you have the best audio quality of any of us combined?
Of any of you combined?
Of any of us.
Of any of you, okay.
I mean, Yeah.
purely because I just sit down and I stick to it. So many people get tired of their voice, and I never had that problem. So there's no voice that I've been tired of.
Josh, go ahead.
So what's your long-term goal? What are your plans to expand this?
They're going to be guests on the other top 10
Sure.
ranked cosplay podcasts for one.
Why would
That's
you
a very good one.
be invited to conventions?
One of our, I guess, theories is that as long as cosplay is a hobby, as long as people are enjoying it, we have the potential for expansion. Conventions are something that were huge. It's moved to online since the pandemic and everything, but it's definitely given us a chance to sort of grow through that, meeting in person, word of mouth, just meeting similar people in same areas, I guess.
Okay.
So I don't know if we have the timer up because there's 6 of us in here, so we're maxed out. So
Yeah.
I'm not personally sure how much time we have left, but we're probably pretty close to it.
30
Okay.
Yeah, 30 seconds.
30 seconds. Oh, there she goes.
All right.
Okay, good. Well, one thing I'll share, because Josh wasn't able to tell me very clearly if we have time to talk about this more later or not, but your call to action, Pannon, at the end, like that's a good just kind of like sign off to be like, okay, like great, like go do something well in the world. Like that's good. But what I'm looking for when I ask for a call to action is like, you guys need to have like the 10 biggest mistakes that every cosplay member makes at conventions, like something that people are gonna be like, I need that now. And then where do they go to get that? They go to your Facebook group to join your Facebook group, and then they'll be gifted that download for doing that. And
So-
like that, go ahead.
We actually have done that where we will get topic suggestions from listeners, and then we will, in the Facebook group and on some of our episodes, say, hey, we're going to be doing an episode on this. Send in your suggestions. And so we do have things like that, as well as our standard call to action, which is...
Yeah, but making people do work is going to be less powerful and less successful than creating a highly valuable like lead magnet or gift for people to have them join your community. So time's up. Looking forward to further conversations.
Thanks.
Oh, you're muted again.
I keep doing it. Lots of people on this stream. I'm just jumping everybody around. All right. Up next, we have Tamara Anderson with the podcast Stories of Hope in Hard Times. All right, Tamara, ready to take it away?
Yep, let me get my screen ready to share here. Can you hear me okay?
Can hear you great, yeah.
Awesome.
Oh, and Brendan just reminded me to put the timer up as well. Thank you, Brendan.
Okay, let me get this ready. Presenter view.
There we are.
Can you see that?
We can, yeah.
Oh, good. I'm glad I figured it out. Wonderful. Well, the year 2020, if we could describe it in one word, it would be kind of crazy. Just when you think things couldn't get any worse, it does. So what do we need more of right now? Hope. If I could summarize it in one word, we need hope. Welcome to my podcast, Stories of Hope in Hard Times. And I'm pleased to be a finalist in the Voice of the West competition. First, quick intro on me. My name is Tamara K. Anderson. I'm a wife. I'm a mother of 4 children, 2 of which are on the autism spectrum. I'm a speaker. I'm an author of the book Normal for Me. Obviously, I'm a podcaster, and my goal is to inspire hope. And the reason my goal is to inspire hope is because I lived with chronic stress and little hope for about 10 years of my life when my kids were younger. Here's a picture of my kids at a family reunion, and I'm going to kind of zoom in here so you can see everybody else is normal, and there's my kids. And life was difficult. It was challenging. I could barely imagine even the next day of what life was going to be like. So I couldn't imagine the next month or the next year because I was so overwhelmed. And because life was so hard, I wanted to give up, and I felt so alone.
Hey,
And I felt,
Tamara.
yeah.
I'm super sorry to jump in. We'll give you a couple extra seconds here, but your slides are not actually moving on our end.
Oh, really? What slide are you on?
The very first one, actually.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, gosh darn it.
Yeah.
All
So
right.
so you've presented the PowerPoint editing window and not the presentation itself.
Oh, shoot.
Okay. Well, I was on presentation mode.
So now we can see your family.
Oh,
Oh.
well,
And
I'm
now
going to
we
do
can't.
this.
see it all, unfortunately.
No, that's okay. I have backup, believe it or not.
All right.
So you are in luck, my friends. So I was in a very, very bad place for a while, is what it boils down to. And the good news is I made my way through. There we are. Ta-da! That's my family now. We're grown up. We're in a better place, and I'm to the point now where I'm thankful I made it through that harder point, and I want to give back. So Stories of Hope in Hard Times, let's see, was launched in January of 2019. And I launched it so that I was releasing an interview style podcast every other week where I interviewed someone, had them share their story of hope, what they learned from their lessons. And I just hit my 50th episode this week. So yay. I have to say, JLD, I had a one-on-one with you back in July of last year. And my question to you was, how do I expand my reach and influence? And you gave me 2 tips. You said, you need to go to a weekly podcast, which overwhelmed me because I'm still a mom and I still have these kiddos on the spectrum. But you gave me a second idea. You said, why don't you do a takeaway episode of you talking in between, of you sharing something? It doesn't have to be the hour-long episode. And it took me about 6 months to implement it, but I did it. And I'm pleased to say I saw an increase right after. So Stories of Hope in Hard Times. My theme and message is people love listening to stories. They resonate with them. They remember them. And so what we love to do is talk about ideas and solutions, things that got people through. And a lot of these lessons transpose to other situations in life, so they don't have to be having the same problem to learn from it. Another thing we talk about is how God helped them through their challenges. And my main goal is to inspire hope. People that I've interviewed, and this is just a small sampling, honestly, we've talked about everything from cancer to death, paralysis. We've talked about suicide. We've talked about depression, special needs children. It has just been bullying, Tourette's. It's been amazing to interview these people and learn from them. I just feel honestly humbled and amazed at how amazing these people are. Statistics on my podcast. Okay. 93% US, 2% New Zealand and Canada, 1% Australia and Nigeria. Top listening cities: Salt Lake City, Chicago, LA, Mesa, Arizona, and Dallas, Texas. Females are my target. It seems I have about a 75% female listening audience, 25% male, ages 25 to 64. Pretty broad range there. They also like cooking, value shopping, reading, and about 66% listen on mobile. Another really cool thing is that in the last 90 days, I've seen basically since COVID happened, I've seen anywhere from about a 55 to a 90% increase on my podcast downloads. I think people are really looking for solutions. They're looking for hope at this time. Marketing strategy, of course, is you interview somebody and then they share, and it just naturally spreads. Final goals, and I'm out of time. I guess I'll have to talk about those in the questions.
Boom. Well, I'll start off. And I can just say that I honestly remember that conversation that we had.
Do you?
I am so thrilled that you implemented my second suggestion of having that solo show where you're doing the recap. I'm a little disappointed it took you so long to do it, but I get it. Life takes over. But I commend you for actually implementing that. And I'm not shocked at all at the results you had from that, because there's multiple things that happen when you do something like that. Is you're taking the spotlight that we as interview hosts have to shine on our guests, and now you're allowing yourself, your spotlight to shine through, which is going to build even a more intimate and more powerful relationship with your listeners. And that's what you've been able to do now because of that single show that you've been releasing once every week or so. And so that's just a very, very powerful strategy that you've been able to implement. And it makes a lot of sense to me that during this COVID time that people are searching for the topics that your show ranks for, because, you know, you just titled it very wisely and very well. And the thing I wanted to ask you for a question before we pass it over to the other judges is, what's been the most powerful message that you've received from a listener to date?
Oh my goodness gracious. That is a very, very good question. I think there are several, but one of the biggest ahas that I've heard from listeners has to do with, I had one listener compare I can't remember how he exactly phrased it, so forgive me if I butcher it, but he said, I want you to look at your life on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the worst thing that could possibly ever happen to you, 1 being this is fine, life is good. And he says, often in life, we'll be at like a 2 or a 3, and we will crank our anxiety up like, this is the worst thing that could possibly happen to me. For him, he was talking, his son had died. And he said, if you need to borrow my worst thing, you can borrow my worst thing. But he says we chronically sometimes make things so much worse than they really are. And he says, sometimes we need to just stop and take a breath and say, I'm not going to make this worse than it is. I'm going to step back from my situation and say, okay, here's the worst thing that's ever happened to me. How does this scenario today rank to it? And you often find that it's maybe only a 2 or a 3 or a 5, but we tend to.
Got it. I'm going to cut you off just because we got a time limit, but thank you for sharing that. Eliza, what do you have?
Yeah. Do you have any strategies for reaching people outside of your current listener or audience?
Absolutely. And I think the beauty of interviewing different people is that I will naturally reach a different audience as it goes. I also, of course, like the podcast before me, invite people as they're listening to, if somebody comes to mind, to share that podcast with them. And so it grows that way. And I'll have people message me out of the blue. Oh, thank you so much. I so needed that podcast. So it is gradually growing. And I've seen it gradually increase. The more people I interview, the more people who share and stuff like that.
Awesome. Thanks.
So one question I have, because of the nature of your podcast about being hope, I think we can all agree that right now there's a lot of unrest and uneasiness going on. How have you been able to address that?
Ooh, good question. In fact, I'm actually releasing an episode just this next week specifically talking about that. But I've released several episodes just in the last several months talking about 3 tips that you can do to have hope today. But this next episode, I'm specifically talking about hope is associated with goals and how you can't have hope without a goal. And that's something that I've talked to a couple of psychologists about. And so as we set baby goals, some of the reasons I think our hope has decreased in the last little bit is because we've all had these things set in our goals in our brains. And we're like, okay, I'm going to do this and this and this. And because of COVID, they fall, we can't do them anymore. And so we've had to kind of scramble in our brains to set new goals, new ideals, new visions of what our future is going to look like. And so we've kind of had to adjust that. And so I'm talking specifically about, let's start setting a few new baby goals, something you can look forward to that will pull us out of this depression and help us move forward with hope.
Okay. I believe that is time.
Thank you.
That is time. Awesome. Thank you so much, Tamara. All right. Let me switch everyone around here. Up next, we have Kenny Smith presenting Super Dirt.
wasn't expecting to go yet. Sorry.
Surprise! All right, you ready for this?
Never.
Okay. You're gonna do great.
Okay. All right. So I'm here to pitch you on the wonderful podcast called Super Dirt. And no, it has nothing to do with motocross, which it often gets confused with. So we have talked about, adding to the title or possibly taking it away. But right now we have a listening base that probably wouldn't like that very much. We are a parody satire news podcast. And what we do is a scripted portion of our podcast and an ad-lib portion of our podcast. The scripted portion is Verse News. Verse News talks about things going on in the day and is the serious portion. And then Super Dirt is the portion where we kind of sit around like TMZ and dig up dirt on superheroes, wizards, cartoon characters, because Super Dirt is an all-inclusive podcast of all fandoms, and our goal is to have them all intertwine and meet. We each play a character. There's 7 of us on the podcast. We each play a character, or 2, sometimes 3, sometimes 4, and we come together to talk about world issues. So we are kind of aligned with the news cycle, as well as all of our thoughts on what does a superhero do or a wizard do, or someone who has power over other people or stronger than other people do when nobody's looking. And if we don't watch, then who would be watching? And that was the whole premise of Super Dirt to begin with. We focus on inclusivity and trying to include all the fandoms around. So our reach is kind of wide and limitless. And we are formatting the show as we go based on feedback and based on, things that worked and things that didn't. We're really early on in the stages. We only have about 8 to 9 episodes released, while we have approximately 17 recorded, and we're releasing those weekly on Tuesdays. So we plan on working a publicity campaign to expand our reach, as well as asking our listeners to contribute or just go to our website and subscribe to get special messages. And we are putting together a newsletter, not much unlike The Onion, and starting to release things on Facebook and Twitter in that regard, and Instagram. So we are out there doing our thing. We deal with current topics of the day with some sensitivity and some levity, but since we are putting it in the context of a complete fantasy universe of a fandom or cross fandoms, it's a little bit easier to talk about. So we like that about our podcast. We have a lot of fun. We laugh a lot. We talk about, okay, so going to get down into the bare bones of the podcast. Super Dirt has 5 different segments, and each segment is usually based around a character or the group of characters talking about things as a whole. So we usually start out with headlines, and we have headlines like Wonder Woman is a mass murderer because she's hitting a lot of birds with her invisible plane that they can't see. And all the way to Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles framed Roger Rabbit, and what in the world is that all about? We enjoy bringing the fandoms together and hope that it will provide that inclusivity for all. And that is all I have to say, because I talked too fast and didn't pace myself. So we can go to the question and answer period if you would like. Sorry, Priscilla. Sorry.
So Kenny B. Smith, you said that on your show you have people like go to your website to sign up for special messages and a couple other very kind of vague things.
Yeah.
What are you going to be working on in the future to actually have a call to action that your listeners are going to want to take?
We are actually developing those with some of these tools, offering them. We call to action to have them go to our website every episode, so that way they can see what we have to offer. They can subscribe to our email list, so they can get some of those things. But we're trying to pull traffic to our website to see what call to action is working best, or what giveaway, I guess, is working
Give me an
best.
example of a call to action you'll use.
If you want to, hear yourself on air, go to superdirtnews.com and we will put your headline up, or go to superdirtnews.com and follow us and we will send you out our newsletter. It's really rough. We're really kind of new and in the stages.
Yeah, I'd like you to hopefully listen to what I shared with the last individuals, the last podcasters, and just think to yourself, like, what would my listeners love to have? Like, what is like a PDF or a short, this or this that would actually make them take action? And like what you just shared, like, it's not going to have them take action.
Yeah,
so
it's not going to have them take action yet.
Just it's there. I mean, because that's the thing is you have, very passionate, just like you have people that want to take action if given the right reason. You're just not giving them the right reason at this time. And the kind of one thing I want to share before we pass it on, because I didn't get to with Blair, because I thought that we might have some kind of like feedback time, is, I think the name Super Dirt's fine. Like it's like, especially if you've already got some momentum with it, like that's great. But what you're failing, the same with what Blair's failing, is you're failing to skim test. When people are skimming and they're seeing Super Dirt, like you said, people are thinking that it's motocross or so they're you're not even giving a chance for your avatars, for your listeners to find out more about you. So you need to think of a 4 to 6 word tagline that's going to jump out at your perfect listener that they're like, Super Dirt, blah, 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 blah. And they're like, oh, I get it. I want in, and like, honestly, it could be like, find out why Superwoman's a murderer. Like, guess what? Every single one of your listeners would get it immediately. They'd be like, I want to know that. Like, but people that are just going through the podcast tour, seeing 1,000 podcast logos, you're failing the skim test, just like Blair is by just having BYU for Mormon. Like, he needs to have, what the details of his show is actually about to draw everybody in. So Eliza, go ahead.
We do have a tagline. We do say we're digging up the dirt on the supers, and that is with all
Is it in your logo?
Yeah, it's on our
logo. Awesome. Good to hear. Good stuff.
Cool. I'm curious about your listener demographics, if you happen to know them.
Currently our listener base is between the age of 35 to 47-ish, mostly in the United States, although we do have some outliers in Ireland and Germany, weirdly enough.
Cool.
And they're generally we slant a little male. I feel like sometimes fandom does that, but I don't know for certain because I don't know tons about fandom. And usually in the income demographic of right around 50K a year. So I'm not 100. Those are the only demographics I've been able to grab off of the analytics. We've only really been releasing episodes since the beginning of May-ish. So relatively new.
Awesome. Do you guys have guests?
We have not yet, but we do have a spot on our roster called a roving reporter, interdimensional reporter, that we hope to bring people on and have some fun with some character development there. So
cool, thanks.
Final question. What are your listeners, what are you hoping that they get when they go to your website? Because your call to action was go to the website, get the newsletter. What's the goal? What is it you're wanting them to get out of that call to action?
I'm hoping that they either submit a headline, because we would like to have a lot of community involvement as to what they would like to hear us talk about, or we want them to subscribe to our email list so that way we can reach out to them weekly via email and give them early content and things like that. That was our goal in bringing them to the website initially.
Do you have any plans for anything like a Patreon, or because it sounds like you're heading in that direction, but it doesn't seem very clear in that respect?
We do, but now we're out of time. But it is in development, the Patreon. So yeah.
Okay.
You should have a Twitter.
We do.
One last thing. Oh,
Super Dirt HQ.
Awesome. Cool.
All right.
All right, and that is our time. Thank you, Kenny, for that pitch. All right, so at this point, the judges are going to leave this video. They're going to go into another room where they're going to talk and deliberate, because that's all of our pitches tonight. And yes, which Brandon's just shared that to everyone, so you have access to that. Bobby and I are going to come on and talk for a little bit while the judges are deliberating. So judges, go do your thing.
All right, see you in a few.
Oops. All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome. So at this point, I am waiting for. Oh, and there is Bobby. Hello, Bobby.
Oh, wow. That was great. Whoa.
So at this point, I am waiting for. Oh, and there is Bobby. Hello,
I
Bobby.
need to,
You have your audio.
I
I was like, why do I hear myself?
I did the classic. This is not my first rodeo. Well, okay, it's my second rodeo. So
It's all good. It's all good. All right. Well, oh man, I'm so glad I'm not a judge because, yeah, let me tell you, I couldn't choose.
no, thank you, judges, for taking that on because I don't have a clue. Podcasting is such a powerful thing, and everybody has such a passion for what they're doing and why they're doing it. And it's interesting that most podcasts, they have this underlying message thing that's not always the same thing as what you would think because of the title. Mm-hmm. Everybody had this passion and this inclusivity. I mean, pretty much every single one of those podcasts were about including people, and I just think that is so cool.
I do love that, and I love that that's kind of where our community came together with the podcast that we chose this year. Is that it's about building that community. It's about including people and bringing people into the message. I think that's kind of incredible because I know not every podcast is like that, but the fact that all the podcasts we had pitching this year all ended up having that theme, it's really, really cool. I love it.
It is cool.
Yeah. So.
Wow, it's almost over. Wow.
No, oh my gosh. We
made it. We did. We made it. Since last year, we took a breath for a week. It's interesting. After the last Utah Podcast Summit, it was amazing. We had so much fun and we just disappeared for a week. And then Yumi and Brandon just been working on this literally almost a year and have been thrown every curveball you could possibly be thrown.
Oh my gosh, let me tell you. So for those of you who don't know out there, we were having a pitch competition for this every month. Well, our February pitch competition was supposed to happen the day that my sister had a stroke, or no, it was the week after my sister had a stroke. So I kind of couldn't organize anything. So that started off everything. And then March, we were still trying to get our heads back on straight because the world kind of felt like it was ending. So, there were a couple months there where we were just like, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? But, this community pulled together. It helped us test out a couple of different platforms because we did go through a couple different platforms before we landed on how we ended up setting up the summit this year. And I'm just so grateful to everybody for their patience and being willing to come on and be like, oh, what's this random, platform that you're having us try out tonight?
Wow. Yes. Off the hip, guys. It is tough to move from this to that like that. And right. You know what? We made it. We did it. And I don't know about everybody else, but man, it was amazing for me. I got so much powerful stuff that I'm excited to learn to take some action.
Right. In the comments, if you've been able to attend today, I'd love to hear what your favorite thing was from the summit today. But I think, while we have some of those comments coming in, Bobby, what's going on next year?
Wow. Next year with the Utah Podcast Summit?
Next year.
The big thing is maybe a name change.
Yeah. So this is something we've actually been talking about for a while. And we decided to do one more year as the Utah Podcast Summit. And then everything happened and it ended up not exactly being the Utah Podcast Summit anyway.
Not only Utah Podcast Summit, absolutely.
Yeah, which it ended up being a great transitional year name. So next year we're going to be changing the name of the summit because, we don't want it to just be limited to Utah. We don't want it to just be limited to the Intermountain West. And we kind of took a look around at the other podcast conferences that were out there. We're like, you know what? There is no reason for us to limit ourselves based on this name. So let's change it. And so one thing that you might have noticed that we have in a lot of the branding for this year is that we've been calling this the Peak Podcasts, Not Only Utah Podcast Summit. Well, Peak Podcast is our company name. It's the company that, it's Peak Podcast LLC, basically, that we registered this summit under. And we sat down in March and we were like,
what's wrong with that?
Why don't we just use that? Like, we have a great name already.
We're in the peaks, and we don't want to just be Utah. We want to be the west side of the continent and have, well, everywhere on the continent, actually, if we can. Why not?
Oh, I'd love it. Yeah. I mean, globally, like, why limit ourselves? We've built such a cool community here. Why not introduce it to the world? So yeah, so next year, instead of the Utah Podcast Summit, it's going to be Peak Podcast. You might have noticed a couple places I'm starting to change the name on our social media sites slowly. Instagram's already been changed to Peak Podcasts, and Facebook will be next. But yeah, so we're really excited about it, about the name change, because when we started this up, we didn't know what it was going to become. We started this, right. We just were like, let's put together a podcast conference. And there was such a demand for it. We're like, oh, okay, we got a thing here.
3 years ago, this thing was exploding. Now it's just everywhere.
Yeah.
Podcasting.
Yeah. I go to conferences and people are like, oh, the Utah Podcast Summit, you're part of that. Yeah. So, which is
very cool when you get recognition and you're starting to see things. And,
it's a little surreal too. I'm like, wait, how do you know about that?
Yeah. When people start saying, hey, yeah, that was a really good event. I heard from this person and this person how cool it was. I'm coming next year. And wow, cool. Hey, it's getting some traction. And it's like we've said over and over again, it is just a passion for us. This really is because we love the podcasting community. We love being a part of this. When we first started this, I had one podcast, The Biz for Good Show. Now I'm a part of 5 podcasts.
Oh my gosh, Bobby.
I do 5 podcasts now, and I freaking love it. I am so addicted.
Oh, Bobby.
It's such an amazing platform to be able to get a message out there and have a passion and a love. So
it is. And honestly, like, it's enriched my life so much too, just being able to have everybody come together and meet so many people. I've made friends from this summit. I was talking to someone else who said that, like, she'd made a really good friend at our summit. And yeah, it's just, I think that might have been Tamara, actually. Yeah, it was Tamara. Oh, she's waving at me from backstage. Yeah. So, and just, we love that. That's what this is about. It's about the community. It's not about just being about Utah. It's not about the money for us, really. It's just about building this community, bringing people together, and everybody growing together. So, yeah. And so I think
selfishly, it's just been beautiful for me. I'm sorry. I just love it. I love meeting the people, even here in the virtual world, that I'm not a big fan, because I love face to face. I love touching people. Well, not touching people, but you know what I mean. I just love being with folks. Hanging.
Pepperoni moment.
What's going on? Okay, sorry. I love that. But this has been really cool. We have all engaged and connected, and the people asking questions online. To me, this has been a huge success, just personally for me.
Yeah, even though we've been separated, I feel like we've really been able to connect with people today. I've loved the conversations that we've had with people. I've loved seeing the chat and the conversations going through that. It's really been amazing today. Like, I was looking through photos of the past year's summits, and I was a couple days ago, and it was so bittersweet, because I looked at it. It was like, oh, I miss that energy. I miss seeing all the people. I miss having everybody come together in the same room. But at the same time, I think we've been able to put something together here that was really, really cool and brought people together. Even if we can't be, like, physically together, I feel like we were able to connect really well this year.
Yeah. Last year I had like 103 temperature. I was so sick. With all the stuff going on now, it's beautiful that I'm actually healthy today. But last year I had a smile on my face the whole time. It was so much fun, but I was so sick.
I'm not sure how you made it through that summit, to be honest. Oh my gosh.
I was up doing a panel, and I thought I was going to faint a couple times. And I can't faint. I can't faint in front of everybody.
Oh gosh.
So this has been even funner for me than last year was awesome. But it is much better to be healthy. And so hats off to
That is for sure. I am glad that, everyone's been healthy because it's something to worry about with people when you build up a community like this. You want to make sure that everybody is safe. And so that was one of our main thoughts when we decided in March to go virtual. We were like, we don't know how this is going to go. It's probably better to go virtual just to make sure everybody's safe and we protect our community because, again, that's the most important thing for us. So
yeah, it was interesting. We were one of the first folks to cancel our event space, and the event person was like, "Gosh," and then like the next week,
everything else canceled.
It was all that. Well, I don't even know if it was the next week. It may have been a day or two because we kind of just we're like, okay, if they're canceling school and stuff, this is not going to stop. So we put our efforts and we pulled it off. So.
We were in a unique position because in our day jobs, Bobby works with schools doing technology for charter schools.
Yep.
Brandon also does technology for a local school district. And I had just come back from Podfest in Orlando. And I also kind of follow the news obsessively. So I knew that this was coming.
You did.
I knew it was coming. And so even when I was at Podfest, I was constantly like sanitizing my hands, all that fun stuff. But when schools got shut down and I just come back from Podfest, actually my husband, Kyle, you've seen him pop up in a couple of comments throughout the day. He was actually supposed to be at a conference in Orlando at the same time I was, and a much bigger conference for like medical technology. And it got canceled. And that's kind of when I knew. I was like, So the wheels kind of started turning for me then. But then when schools got canceled, we're like, nope, this, got to go virtual this year.
All right. Hopeful, man, this must be tough. The judges they must be going back and forth. I'm sure JLD is giving them a what for. and so dodging and leaving.
Everybody has such a great perspective. Each of our judges, it's going to be interesting. Going to be really interesting to see what they come back with. I'm excited to hear the feedback.
Oh, me too. And I guess this time you've still got everybody in there, so you're going to have to kick me out again, right?
I am going to have to kick you out. I'm sorry, Bobby.
Oh well. I'll be watching it like everybody else. So.
All right, yeah, because I would love to have as many of our presenters in the backstage as possible, but it's sad because we're using the tool StreamYard, and the StreamYard in the backstage is limited to 6 people on camera and then 10 people in the background, which, I mean, considering this is the only limitation we've run into with this platform, and it's been so simple for us to use throughout the rest of this summit.
With the exception of stopping the stream, with the exception of that, it was a really good.
So what Bobby's talking about is if you have a ticket and you go in to watch the build track, the morning sessions, you will find that there are 2 videos because in between Bobby thought he was pausing the stream and he stopped it.
Yeah, I didn't pause it. I just killed it. Are you sure you want to stop this? Of course I'm sure. I'll just start it right back up. No, you don't.
No, you can't do that.
Technology. I love technology.
But I have to say, considering that was probably the worst tech snafu we had today, I'm feeling pretty good.
Not too bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, not too bad. And of course, everybody can listen to everything as long as they want. The site will be up for, not eternity probably, but quite a while, hopefully. So go back, and I know I'm going to go to the tracks that I wasn't a part of, because I got so much out of mine that I'm excited to see what I missed. Even in the start track, I'm sure the start track even has some value. Even though you've been doing podcasting forever, I'm going to watch it. So
awesome.
Are they back in yet?
I see Brandon has jumped back in. He's given us an update. They're getting close, but not yet. So they must be having a tough time.
Interesting.
Yeah. Brandon is running the room where the judges are deliberating, so he's got insights, but yeah.
Wow, this is interesting.
Yeah,
I'm hoping that they give a lot of input, like JLD wanted to do. I'm hoping that that's what they'll give a lot of input. Is Brandon still in here? Tell him to do that.
Looks like he jumped out again. He
No,
just jumped
of
in
course.
to give us an update.
There we go. All right.
Yeah.
Getting close, but not yet. So good. Okay. Anything else? Boy.
Well, I'm looking at some comments here. Maxwell Institute. So this is Blair. Blair, thank you. I'm glad that you appreciate the Peak podcast name. That's really sweet of you. You see it, Bobby?
Peak. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
It is a good name. It's perfect.
Yeah.
What else we got? Any
Well, we're at the point of the podcast where people start tuning out because the hosts are rambling and not getting to the point. Watermelon.
Usually I can't shut up. I don't know what my problem is.
Oh, so Tamara asks, what's the story of how we got John Lee Dumas to come? We emailed him.
Yeah. Mr. John Lee Dumas. And I'll tell you, I emailed, this is so funny because he's a rock star, guys. The thing is, you do have to work your butt off. And man, when I emailed him, he called me in like an hour and said, okay, what's going on? Luckily though, he had been at the same thing you were at, and he had met with Dave Jackson, who was our keynote last year. And Dave said he had such a good time, and it was so good that it wetted John Lee Dumas's whistle. And so when I reached out, he's go, oh, cool. This is the event that Dave Jackson was talking about. So, hey, yeah, I'll give it a shot. So that's kind of how it happened. It's who you know, it's how you connect with people. And when you do good things, people want to work with you. It's kind of that easy. And Dave is a gentleman and a scholar, and he gave us a good word.
All right, so we have people back. And there is Eliza. Perfect.
Okay.
Let's bring the judges on screen.
Been fun.
Oh, hey.
Oops, we lost John for just a minute, so I'll take him off screen.
Well, that's a pretty cool looking chair, though. It looks kind of comfortable.
It does look like a comfortable chair. Oh, and he is back now. I didn't want to just have like an empty chair on screen.
Is that chair as comfortable as it looks?
Oh man, this is on fire.
All right, are you gonna kick me out, Chrisella?
Eliza, I can only see like your nose up right now.
How's that?
A little better, but you got to go a lot more.
How about this?
That's what I'm looking for right there. See, look, I can give video and podcasting advice.
This has been awesome, guys. Thank you for everybody for being a part of it. This has been
all of your
awesome.
All right, Bobby and I are going to jump out of the video and continue watching from the background.
Awesome. Well, I want to start off. I want to thank everyone who's participated in this. In every qualifying round, as Chrisella said, I've been through every single round. And so, again, I want to thank everybody who's participated. I fully know how much work goes into these. So just know that you guys are doing a great job. But I'm going to actually pass the time over to John because I'm just excited to hear his thoughts, recommendations before we announce the winner on this.
Yeah, so I want to take a couple of seconds to go through the shows that we're able to present and kind of give maybe one or two pieces of feedback. And Eliza, if you want to jump in, and Josh also, I know you have a couple of things you might want to share as well. But for the first one with Blair, as I shared briefly during the Super Dirt thing, is like your show is failing the skim test right now, because what's happening is, people are going like into the religion category and they're looking at all of the logos, and your show is attracting everybody who is into, Mormonism, is, a Mormon, because they're seeing the BYU side of that thing. But your show is so much more inclusive than that, as you very eloquently shared. And because of that, like, I just know that you're missing out on incredibly valuable listens and listeners. And Josh actually did share briefly, like one of the episodes that he listened to, like about exorcism and some other things. There's just like, there's so many people that would want to hear that, but would never even have the chance to be exposed to your content with something just as simple as a logo. And again, I know that you had shared, and I think that, and you want to maybe just clarify, I think that you had shared in the comments that, like, changing your branding is not really an option on that side of things, but I feel like there is an option to bring in a really strong tagline that, is showing how inclusive your podcast is for all faiths, and how you're really bringing a lot of dimensions into your conversations that you're having, just so that everybody has a chance to experience that. So before I move on to the next one, Eliza or Josh, you want to add anything from Blair's conversation?
Eliza?
I'm good. I'm good.
Oh,
I
you're
just
good?
have
Okay.
to agree with
Okay.
John.
Yeah. From a presentation standpoint, Blair, you did a great job.
Great job.
Sound quality, spot on. Just even in this pitching mode, you got to be still in that podcast mode, if you will, and that just, it shows the level of commitment to the show. Like John said, having that tagline is really going to expand the limitations that you have with your show. Having been able to listen to a few episodes, especially the exorcism episode, it was fantastic. It was great. But you kind of hit that wall without that tagline to bring more people in, especially outside of the Utah culture, if you will.
So for the Stitch and Seam podcast, we are all excited about that podcast because we see the potential, the professionalism, the different dynamics that everybody of the team that you've created there, and there's just a lot of good things coming for you guys. But a huge area that you failed in thus far, which is exciting because you've had success, although you've left a lot on the table, which you're going to be able to now go and make the most of. And I definitely encourage you to go back and listen. I gave an entire sharing of my screen during the AMA, where I literally walk you step by step through this process of getting on any other podcast as a guest that you want to get on. And so now you're having this situation where you're in your great bubble of your cosplay podcast, but now you have this list of 9 other podcasts that are all really successful cosplay podcasts, and it hasn't even quite crossed your mind to think of ways to commingle your audiences, to grow together. It's this mindset of abundance that's so valuable and important in the podcasting world, is like all ships rise in a high tide. So now you just need to take that list and then also just be going into like a directory like Apple Podcasts and typing in the word cosplay and like whatever other keywords, like put yourself in the mind of your perfect listener and saying, hey, what would my perfect listener type in this search bar for their perfect podcast, which is my show, the Stitch and Seam, but like, what would they type in to find that podcast and podcasts like that? And then all of the shows that show up, just take that strategy I showed during the AMA, apply it, and now you're going to be able to go on these shows and be a guest and share your knowledge and your experience and give a call to action for people to go listen to your podcast. Because guess what? Those are all podcast listeners, which is super critical. So, Josh, you want to add anything to that structure?
Yeah, along with the cross promotion, getting onto other podcasts, I definitely feel as you guys do that and really expand your audience, that's going to get your foot in the door in the convention scene. You guys have a very visual niche of cosplay, and being able to translate that to audio is a huge challenge. And you guys have done great up to this point, but there's so much more you can do.
And you just gave me a great idea, Josh. It's like,
yeah,
you guys need to be interviewing the founders of these conferences. Like, find out who the actual people who are running these conferences and have them come on your show and give it, share with them that it's going to be a way for them to, essentially talk about and promote their conference in a sense to your listeners, but it's you having an opportunity to build an amazing relationship with these individuals who, of course, their next move, now that they know you, like you, and trust you, is going to be, let's get you guys involved with our conference. Thank you so much for this help. I mean, that's the reason why I was the, opening keynote for Podcast Movement way back in the day, because they knew that Podcasters Paradise was going to be a huge supporter of that conference. And so we worked together in that manner, which was super valuable. And the other thing that I, again, briefly mentions for you guys, that's a no-brainer. You're doing a great thing with the Facebook group. Like, that's huge. You want to be doing that because Facebook groups are an amazing place to build your tribe and your community and to have that engaging conversations that I talked about, those 4 questions that are so important that you're going to be asking them. But you've got to give them a powerful reason to go. Like, people just love these vague, broad, like, oh, just come join our Facebook group, or just, oh, come for special messages, or just come for a newsletter. Like, nobody wants those things. What people want is a amazing, like, solution to a problem they have. So what are the problems that your listeners have? Like, how about, like, again, I have no idea. So I'm making this up off the top of my head. You'll come up with amazing things yourself. But, like, what are going to be, like, the 10 cosplay costumes for 2021? Like, be in the know before anybody else. I mean, like, that's just such a random thing. But, like, you got to think of things that they want and that they're going to get for then, come join our Facebook group. And everybody that joins, we're going to have the download posted pinned at the top of the group right there waiting for you. And that's how you're going to actually have people take action. So, Eliza, anything you want to add?
Yeah, we talked about this before too. Just play with other ways that you can incorporate visual aspects, video, and maybe sound design.
Well, I loved your point, Eliza. I think you should go into a little more detail about how cosplay is such a visual medium. How could David really bring in some sound effects?
I just think this is fun because this is just an idea too. I feel like sound effects and music and sound design can sometimes paint or augment a picture that you're already painting with words. And that might be a fun idea to play with, since cosplay is so visual, and that's like the point of cosplay, is to create this.
It just seems like to me, like, your perfect listeners are obviously creative, artistic types. So you've got to find a way to bring that into just an audio medium that Eliza was just talking about, that could really just, again, set you apart from other shows. And you have somebody like David, who can bring that in.
Yeah, it could be fun.
So, stories of the hope and hard times. What I really want to see from you is, like, I just really want you to start thinking about, how can I incorporate seasons or series into my show? Because right now it seems to me like your show is just kind of a ship without a rudder. Now, it's a ship that's working because you're telling inspiring stories, hopeful stories. I'm sure the content is solid and you've seen an increase in listenership and all these things. But how can you, like, come up with themes and turn those themes into a season or into a series? So now, like, during a time of a pandemic, like, what will be, like, the best 6 to 10 episodes that people could listen to? And then what about during times of when you've lost somebody close to you? Like, these are this season 4 is all about that. And then, what about, when you've just, undergone a devastating illness? So I think you need to start saying, how can I theme and really create these great seasons or series in my show that people are going to then be able to be like, you know what, I have this, I'm going through this right now, and I need to find hope in this area. And then you're just going to be able to say, hey, season 7, season 4, like, this is for you, instead of just people having to kind of be like, okay, these are all just random shows about random topics over time.
Yeah, I love the structure idea. I think the season direction is going to be most beneficial, especially, if someone's going through watching a loved one go through cancer. I personally went through that, and I can tell you, not going to choke up. But during that time, that's the time when a podcast focusing on how somebody else who lived through it was able to make it through. That would have been so beneficial for me during that time when I had no idea, watching my mom battle leukemia. It was 2 years that I'll look back and go, I made it through that. But I wish I would have had someone there who understood what I was going through. So having those themes, those seasons is not only going to allow you more structure in scheduling, production, but also in marketing the show, especially as there's different things going on, you know, Cancer Awareness Month, different months for like breast cancer awareness, Black History Month, you know, things like that. You can utilize events going on to even market previous shows.
Yeah, I think also give yourself space to talk about current events too. That would be good.
So, was that it?
Yeah.
Cool. And then finally with Super Dirt, I mean, everything that we've said essentially over the past 3 kind of pieces of feedback applies to you. You're such a new show. You're brand new. So, I mean, you're way ahead of where most people are at your stage. So just, know that that's impressive, and we're impressed by that for sure. But a big area that you're coming up short, even when I pressed you on this, so I just want to kind of double down on it, is, you just have these super vague calls to action. And because I've seen it, for years now, people so frustrated that, they just can't get their listeners to engage, and they just can't get their listeners, to take any action. And they see the numbers there, but the numbers are just numbers until they become actual part of your tribe, like in that Facebook group, on your email list. And the answer every single time is they're never providing a solution to their listeners' problem. And so your listeners are never going to take action for these special messages, sign up for our newsletters, like all these different things. It's never going to work. But the minute you flip the switch and you start identifying the biggest problems they have and give a call to action with a promised solution, your tribe will start to be built outside of your podcast. And you want that.
Yep. I I would just say if you're making, let me rephrase that. If you're encouraging your listeners to go to your website, make the experience worth their while. Because the last thing that I would want, I don't want another PDF in my email. I get enough as it is. So just make sure as you have that call to action, make it exciting, make it worth it, make it worth people to either go to your website or sign up for that newsletter and actually want to read it.
Eliza, we get to end with you. What's your final words of wisdom here? Before Josh announces the winner, of course.
I just want to say that, it's a really, really great concept, and keep working on it. Your show is very new. Keep going.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
You guys have a plethora of content to play off of.
Yeah.
So utilize it. Take advantage of it. So
totally.
All right. Drum roll, please.
All right. So the winner of the Voice of the West is Cosplay Stitch and Seam.
Oh! Not unanimous, by the way, but you did win.
Oh, dang.
So,
wow.
Congratulations.
Oh my gosh. Congratulations, you guys.
Wow. Thanks so much.
David, we're thinking about you too, even though you're not on video.
I love you, David.
Jump out so more people can get in.
I must admit, that has been the most difficult decision of the year because Eliza and John left it up to me.
Not true. That's not true.
Not
Well,
true.
we both gave our votes, and
That's
his vote
true.
was the deciding vote.
It was still difficult. Actually, all these. This has been such a great experience. So congratulations, you guys.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much. Wow.
Yeah, and thank you for the advice as well.
I look forward to like implementing all of that, and so thank you so much.
You guys have a lot of potential. I mean, it's exciting. Ooh.
And thank you, David.
David.
David, you want to trip to Puerto Rico?
Where did he go? I don't know. We got to hear from him.
I think Rochelle is trying to bring him in. That's why she went out, but I don't think she's been able to do so. So Josh, why don't you tell them what they won?
Oh, well, obviously they are the winners of the Voice of the Voice of the West podcast. So you now can call yourself an award-winning podcast. That in itself is going to carry your show that much further.
True story. I won Best of Apple Podcast in 2013, but the only thing I ever say is I won Best of Apple Podcast. I don't want people to know it was 7 years ago. So I just say I won Best of Apple Podcast. So 7 years from now, you can still say you won the Voice of the West.
Exactly. And then I believe, if I recall, hearing Chrisella, right?
Don't get in trouble.
David.
There's David. David's about.
I want to hear your reaction.
He's about to become a pro.
It went something like ah, about like that.
Okay, but you know what? What you're gonna have in the future is a great sound effect on hands, so that Eliza can be like, "Yes, sound effects for the win."
No, it's very exciting. It's very exciting.
That was when you had to wah wah.
No, it's definitely something that I've been thinking about, different ways to implement different sound effects and ways to build up the image.
There's just so much opportunity. I mean, there's so many great sound effects specifically for your niche that you're going to be able to bring in. It's just going to add just a whole kind of audio experience, which would be cool.
Sure.
I really hope you guys add some seam rip sound effects to your show. I just feel like that would be a perfect segue to a segment of the horror stories, is just have the sound effect of seams ripping.
Well, what now, Josh? Because it's past my bedtime, so I'm about ready to call it.
Well, I was going to turn the time back over to Chrisella, but she kind of kicked herself out.
And now she can't get back in because there's only 6 of us.
Exactly.
So, you know, I will sacrifice. I will fall on the sword and leave you lovely individuals and wish you all the best. I'll be following everybody going forward and looking forward to seeing everybody rocking on out. So
awesome.
It's been a great day.
Awesome. John, thank you again so much for joining us. This has
pleasure.
been an honor to even be able to do this with you. So thank you so much.
My pleasure. Take care, Josh. Bye, Liza. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
So
I did indeed accidentally kick myself out.
Well, I will turn the time back over to Chrisella.
All right. Well, I'm looking to see if Bobby and Brandon are going to jump back in too. I think we'll have some room there. But I just have to say, I sent a message in the private chat that we had just before Josh announced. And I just wanted to say, like, everybody who pitched tonight was absolutely incredible. You have all done so much to go through this competition. And I am just like, I know, like, you all who are watching this couldn't see it, but they're all here in the back and in the private chat, you know, being super supportive of each other and sending each other advice and, like, you know, building each other up. And I'm a little emotional because it's been absolutely beautiful. And thank you all so much for going through this. Thank you to John Lee Dumas. I'm sorry he had to jump out to let me back in, but thank you to John for being our guest judge tonight. Thank you, Josh. Thank you, Eliza, for being judges tonight. I know that this was not an easy decision tonight. And
Judging
finally,
was hard.
It is hard.
Yeah.
It is. It is very hard.
Yeah. This is why we ask other people to do it. No, Josh seriously has, like I said earlier, he's done so much to help make this pitch competition what it is. So it's really been an amazing experience here. But finally, thank you so much to Cosplay Stitch and Seam, and congratulations. I'm so excited that you are the voice of the West.
Yay. Thank you guys so much. Thank you.
All right, I'm gonna remove everybody and bring Bobby in here. Boop, 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 boop.
Wow!
Oh my gosh!
Whew, that was the what's that football game called? The big one?
The Super Bowl?
Yeah, that was the Super Bowl. You can tell how much of a sports guy I am. Don't listen to many sports podcasts. But that was the Super Bowl of the West podcast. Oh, what a fight. Knockdown, drag out. Beautiful people doing amazing, passionate things. Wow, that was cool. And the advice. Unfortunately, all of the people that were in the Voice of the West were communicating with the private chat, and they were like, "Oh my gosh, this is such good advice." I'm like, "Oh crap, I wish you were putting this in the live comments."
I know,
because it was such good. They were like, "Oh, I'm totally." They were so excited about the. Yeah, Blair, it's all good. She says, "Sorry, Booby." That's not the first time I've been called Booby.
Yeah, that's really great. Yeah, I love that the judges took the time to give feedback for each podcast, and I hope that if you're listening tonight and you have your own podcast, that you do listen to those judges' advice and implement it with your own podcast. Because I'm going to take some notes, go back and listen to it, and implement that in my podcast because it's really good advice. Really good advice.
Wow.
Yeah.
What a great event. It's over. I can't believe it.
It is over.
I can't believe after a year of figuring this thing out, it's done. I'm kind of sad.
Well, now we have the next one.
Yeah, it just keeps going, people. It's a beautiful thing. The secret to success, you just don't quit.
It's true. It is true. All right. Well, with that, I think we're going to end this broadcast. We're going to wrap up the 2020 Not Only Utah Podcast Summit. Thank you to everyone. Thank you to our judges, to our speakers, and to our attendees. It's been an amazing couple of days. You all have, if you have tickets, come back and rewatch it. Send us a message. We'd love to hear from you. Follow us on Facebook so you can stay tuned for updates.
Over and over again, I'm going to watch it.
Right. All right. Thank you all.
See you guys.
Have a wonderful night.
Love you. Be careful out there.